Fun transition, we go from the shortest race of the season, technically, to the longest. How's it going, everybody? My name is Eric. Welcome to this week's episode of Out of the Groove. Got a pretty good amount of things to talk about today, which is what I was hoping for, because last week I felt like I was just rambling for 10 minutes. So hopefully this week's got a little bit more substance to it. To start off, as I'm known to do, let's talk a little bit about last week's race, the All-Star race. Long story short, Kyle Larson looked at probably the best car most of the night. Jimmy Johnson looked fast at times, but ultimately it was Kyle Busch getting the first win of the season for Joe Gibbs Racing. Now, technically it doesn't really go down in the books as their first win of the season because it was a non-points race, but I'm sure Kyle Busch will gladly take his $1 million. And I said long story short, there really wasn't that much of a long story to this year's All-Star race. It was honestly fairly uneventful. At least as far as the race itself went. When you looked at the pre-race festivities, what it seemed like the fans that were at the track were able to get to do and witness and everything seemed like quite the spectacle. But then as for the race itself, not a lot of drama. Those of you who watched the race know what I meant. Other than the final restart, which even that was kind of anticlimactic, there wasn't just a whole lot of real big dramatic shakeups throughout the night. Coming into the weekend, I was kind of hoping the inclusion of softer and regular tires would maybe shake up the leaderboard. Instead, it just really seemed to confuse people, really just seemed to mess with people's strategy, and I didn't really think it added much to the overall event. But hopefully NASCAR and Monster Energy take that to the drawing board and will hopefully try to improve it again next year. The best part of the evening was probably that final restart, which ended pretty quickly when Brad Keselowski had to stay out on old tires on the final 10-lap segment, and he did not get the greatest of restarts. Kyle Busch in third place timed the restart perfectly, took him 3 wide into turn 1, and easily drove off with the $1 million. Now, if we're going to look at this thing in the grand scheme of how this season's potentially going to play out now in the coming weeks, this looks good for Joe Gibbs Racing. Kyle Busch has probably been the best Gibbs car all season long. He's been the only one who's really been, multiple times this season has shown race-winning speed. Denny Hamlin, Matt Kenseth, they've had glimpses here and there. Suarez, not so much, but he's a rookie, will come some slack. But Kyle Busch has been the best Gibbs car this year. He's the only one that's actually looking pretty good in points right now. And he's $1 million richer, so Kyle Busch is really leading that organization. Feels like it's 2010 again. But Kyle wasn't the only Gibbs car that looked pretty good at Charlotte this weekend. I mean, Daniel Suarez won one of the third round of the Open race to get into the All-Star race, which is pretty impressive. I mean, he held off Chase Elliott. That's pretty good. Denny Hamlin and Matt Kenseth are both running top 10. Now, Matt Kenseth had, they said he ran over debris of some kind, cut an oil line under his car or something, and oh, Kenseth! So that ruined his night and my night. But at least it looked like they had some speed. Now, other than Kyle Busch, it was kind of like I said, the usual suspects up front. Kyle Larson, who is our points leader right now, he was probably the best car most of the night. I think he won the first 2 stages, if I'm not mistaken. Jimmy Johnson as well, who already has 2 wins this season. He's kind of been up and down this year, but definitely looked up this weekend at Charlotte, so look for him to be tough to beat in the Coke 600. I thought it was interesting, the Penske guys weren't bad, but they did not, neither of them really looked like top 5 cars at all during the night, so I thought that was kind of interesting. Harvick looked solid, and he's been good on mile and a half the last couple of years, so of course Kevin Harvick's always a guy to watch out for. And I don't know, who else can I shout out? Truex wins a lot of the mile and a half. He wasn't super notable in the All-Star race, but you gotta watch out for him in the Coke 600 as well. So there's my quick recap of basically everything you need to know about the All-Star race this last weekend. Now, besides the All-Star race, there were a lot of other just kind of general NASCAR news stories that surfaced this week that caught my attention. First, a quick note, Eric Almirola, as we all know, they announced that he's going to miss, I think, 8 to 12 weeks at least with his back injury sustained a couple weeks ago in that wreck at Kansas. Regan Smith, who filled in for him in the Open race and the All-Star race this last weekend, is also going to race for him in the Coca-Cola 600. So they still don't have a long-term replacement, but that is now 2 weeks in a Regan Smith will be driving the 43 car. Now, another article I saw, I believe, on NASCAR.com a few days ago, probably interests a lot of you. A lot has been made about, Dale Earnhardt Jr. is going to be retired after this season. Who's going to fill in for the 88 car next year? Is it going to be Alex Bowman? Is it going to be William Byron? Is it going to be Carl Edwards? There's been a lot of questions there. And earlier this week, it seemed Dale Jr. might have given us our first hint at who that will be. Dale Jr. basically publicly endorsed Alex Bowman to replace him in the 88 for next season. Now, as most of you race fans probably know, and probably all you Dale Jr. fans, Alex Bowman filled in for many of the races that Dale Jr. missed last season. Jeff Gordon and Alex Bowman both seemed to basically split time in the 88 car after Jr. went out. So it's not entirely surprising to hear Jr. publicly, commend Alex Bowman and endorse him for the spot. Obviously, the final decision is going to come from Rick Hendrick, and I don't know how much say Dale Earnhardt Jr. is really going to have in that pick, but Alex Bowman looks like the clear favorite at this point. And in my opinion, Alex Bowman probably should be the clear favorite. I mean, he's spent a few years now in the lower division series. He's now raced in the Cup Series a decent amount. He's got a decent amount of experience under his belt already in the Cup Series, and he's performed pretty well in most of those races, you know, and he's young, he's still got plenty of time to grow and blossom into a full-fledged, possibly championship contending career. I think it's a reasonable pick to put Alex Bowman in that car. I know a lot of people have mentioned like William Byron. I think William Byron's still a little young. I think he's the type of guy, if he ever does come up through the Hendrick organization, it would probably be to replace either Jimmy Johnson or Casey Kane at some point. You know, much like Joe Gibbs Racing, Hendrick Motorsports definitely has a promising future in the next few years. You know, you look at a lot of the top young drivers like Chase Elliott or Kyle Larson or Daniel Suarez, Eric Jones, or even William Byron or Alex Bowman, sorry. You look at that, most of those are Hendrick or Gibbs drivers right now. So in other words, it makes sense, I think, for Alex Bowman to come up and take over the 88. I'll be interested to see if like Nationwide stays on as a sponsor, because Dale Jr., I feel like a lot of the sponsorship was really just pulled in by Dale Jr. himself. It'll be interesting to see if Alex Bowman is able to continue to carry on that much sponsorship. And now you'll notice when like Jeff Gordon left the 24 car, sponsors like Exalta or Drive Den Hunger or DuPont, they didn't really stay with Chase Elliott. Chase Elliott had Napa behind him, and he brought Napa all the way up into the Cup Series. So I'm not sure what sort of sponsorship opportunities Alex Bowman is going to bring to Hendrick Motorsports. Maybe Nationwide will stick around. Maybe Exalta or Mountain Dew or someone, they'll pick him up. Who knows? They'll probably be able to find a way to make it work. So much of NASCAR these days is really falling on the backs of sponsorship and who can and can't get sponsors, it seems. Now, the last big thing I want to talk about was some big news that broke this week. They released the full-on 2018 NASCAR Monster Energy Cup Series schedule. And usually, you know, when schedules are released, there's rarely any significant changes. You know, it's kind of the same old, you know that, oh, Homestead's going to be the last race, Daytona's going to be the first race, bada bing, bada boom, we're good to go, let's keep racing. But NASCAR really, I think, listened to the fans in this case and made some interesting revisions. I wrote down 4 or 5 interesting things they did, and at least 3 of them I think they made definitely the right decision in. The biggest changes, and we mentioned this a few weeks ago on Out of the Groove when they announced that Las Vegas would be getting a second race, the biggest revisions came to the first and second rounds of the chase, or the playoffs, whatever the heck they're called. You know, the last couple of years, the first round has been Chicagoland, New Hampshire, and then Dover, I believe. Well, starting in 2018, Richmond, which had previously been the final race of the regular season, will now be the second race of the first round. And Chicagoland, which for the last few years, many years actually, has been the first race of the playoffs, will now be moved to the very beginning of July. So right now, the way the playoffs are set up for 2018, the first round looks like Las Vegas, Richmond, and then Charlotte. But not just any Charlotte. This is one case where I think NASCAR really listened to the fans. They will be running the Charlotte Road Course, which is very new, very different, and it does introduce another road course, not only to the schedule as a whole, but into the chase or the playoffs. So a lot of people for years have been saying, oh, the playoffs should should force drivers to show that they're good at a multitude of different tracks instead of just mile and a half, mile and a half, mile and a half like it's kind of been in years past. Introducing a road course here will potentially allow different drivers to showcase their different talents and could help or hurt many people. But nonetheless, I think it's a good idea by NASCAR. I think it will be interesting because they made it the last race of the first round. That could cause significant drama, but I think that's what NASCAR is going for, and I think in general the fans do like that, so I think NASCAR made a good call there. Another big change is they have moved the Indianapolis race that usually takes place, I'm not sure, in June or July, sometime in the middle of the summer, the Brickyard 400. They're now moving that to September. It will now be the final race of the regular season. And this is another case where I think NASCAR made a very good decision. You know, for the Brickyard Indianapolis, it's a very historic, it's a very cool racetrack, you know, but the race itself, especially the NASCAR, when NASCAR goes and races there, the race is not that exciting. And ticket sales the last few years to Indianapolis would back me up on that. But by making it the final race before the end of the regular season, you know, they had to put it somewhere. By making it the final race before the chase, but before the playoffs, they introduce a new level of drama, a new level of intensity to it that hopefully will make the Indianapolis race more fun to watch than it has been in years past. And it's tough for me to say that because I really like Richmond, and I really liked Richmond as being the last play-in race the way it was last year. I thought that race last season in 2016 was one of the best races of the season, so maybe I'll come back to bite all these words. But I think if you had to put Indianapolis somewhere, putting it as the last race of the regular season not only brings an added intensity to the track, to what's already a very historic, very big event for NASCAR, but also adds a lot of importance and hopefully makes the racing more dramatic and more interesting to watch. That's what I'm hoping for. So it'll be interesting to see how that works out. And the only other real major change also is now to the second round of the playoffs, where in years past it had been, what was it? Kansas, Charlotte, Talladega, something like that. I think that's the order. Now the second round of the playoffs is Dover, Talladega, and then Kansas. And now this one, I'm not sure if the fans necessarily wanted this, but I know I definitely did. You guys heard me talk a couple weeks ago about Talladega. I don't like the fact that Talladega, a track where basically anything can happen to you without it even being your fault, I never liked that that was the final race of the round that could make or break someone's chase, or, you know, however it works. So by bumping it up to now the second race of the round, I feel like there's slightly less riding on it. The crew chiefs and drivers aren't going to go into this thing sweating through their eyeballs now, knowing that they have to go to Talladega. Drivers can know that if you have a bad luck thing happen to you at Talladega, at least you do have Kansas. It gives you a tiny bit, little extra bit of feeling of security, knowing that you have one other race after Talladega at a much less chaotic racetrack. So I think that's good. I don't know what you guys will think. I'm sure some of y'all have different opinions, let me know, but that's at least how I feel. So I'm happy NASCAR did that. I honestly do like that they have Talladega in the chase, you know, even though it's, like I said, it's kind of an up-in-the-air racetrack where anything can happen. I do like they at least have that because, like my earlier argument, and a lot of fans' arguments is the chase or the playoffs should consist of many different tracks of many different styles to make drivers have to prove their versatility, I guess. And so Talladega, we know in the past, some teams, some cars, some drivers are just good at managing the draft, and oftentimes they run well at Talladega, or better than they do at most places. So I think that should at least be somewhat rewarded. But all in all, I'm generally a fan of the NASCAR schedule. The other big thing is they moved up the race, the Daytona 500. Last few years, I think it's been starting like February 23rd, 24th. They moved it up now to, I think it's President's Day weekend. It's going to be starting, I think, the Daytona 500 in 2018 is going to be February 18th, I believe, which is about a week earlier than it has been in years past. So I guess in that case, cool. Off-season will be a little shorter. But then again, like I prefaced this entire segment with, this is still many months away. We have a whole nother season continue. Basically, we have still like more than half of the season left to go. We still have our old playoff format and structure and schedule to go through this fall. So this is all well into our future, but it's interesting to talk about. It's been on the minds of a lot of people this week. And that's about all I have. Quick preview for the Coke 600. I guess if you want me to give you a pick or something for that race, I'm going to actually go with Kyle Larson. I know he's a young driver who in years past has kind of struggled with finishing races. He's been better this year. That's why he's leading the points. But that car was easily probably the fastest car in the All-Star race Saturday night, so I tend to think that that will carry over somewhat into the Coke 600 this Sunday, and I think Kyle Larson will get his second win of the season, and that would be impressive. So that being said, thank you guys for watching. I really hope you enjoyed this week's episode of Out of the Groove. If you haven't already seen it, Double E Cup Series DECS Season 8, Race 1 was uploaded just a couple days ago. That's probably recommended to you somewhere on the side right now. If not, you can go to my channel, watch that. Links in the description for things like Patreon, my Twitter, I think Snapchat or something's down there. We have t-shirts like this are also available. You can buy one of these for yourself, your dog, your son, your brother, your boss. I don't know why they would want one of these. That would be weird. But they're there. As always, I really appreciate all the support you guys give me every single week. I really like doing these Out of the Grooves. I really like that so many people still continue to watch them and support them and like to interact in the comments and whatnot. And when I do live streams, like to ask me questions. I think that's really fun. So I'm glad so many of you are enjoying it, and I hope you continue to support these videos as the season rolls on. But that's all I have for this week's episode. I'll be back next Thursday talking about whatever happens in the Coke 600 and previewing whatever the next race is. I know the 2018 schedule. I don't even know the 2017 schedule. What race is next? I have no idea. I'll be sure to figure that out before next week's episode. But anyway, thanks guys as always for watching. I'll see you next week.